Hey, sorry for the long wait. I finally finished the install on your Saberbay Imp Sword. So here's your hilts. I did some very slight modifications in the inner hilts. So I added 2 retention screws up here and 1 down here. The top one is to hold the LED module in place. The second one is to hold the chassis connector in place. So all of that is hidden underneath this shroud. So you have your blade retention screw up here, which is just a thumb screw. You can loosen it with your fingers and tighten it with your fingers. No need for any Allen keys or hex wrenches. To the sides you have your 2 switches. So there's one there, one there. I have it configured so that this is the main switch to this side, auxiliary switches on this side. To access the internals, all you need to do is unscrew the pommel over here. So just unscrew that. You'll notice that there's this red kind of ring here. So this is kind of a speaker spacer that serves to enclose the speaker. That way you direct all the sound through the pommel openings. So once you have the pommel unscrewed, you can just slide the chassis out. Make sure you cover the opening with your hand. That way the chassis doesn't slide out and hit the floor. So setting that off to the side. Here is our removable glitter red chassis. Up here we have our Xeno 3 board in an RGB configuration. Got our removable 18650 battery. So this battery is the lower discharge version, so it's suitable for RGB baselet setup. Up there we have our removable chassis connector. So all of those rings help to transfer different signals so you can power the 2 switches as well as the RGB LEDs in the hilt itself. Off to the side we have our kill switch. So this would cut the connection from the battery to the board. That way if you're not using the saber for a very long time, you can just flip the kill switch off. Completely cuts power from the battery to the board, that way it doesn't slowly drain the battery over time. Over here we have our USB-C recharge port. So you want to make sure that you open the saber and then charge it. Down here we have our 28mm bass speaker, as well as our tactile switches over here. So usually on removable chassis setups, you don't actually need tactile switches because once you have the chassis inserted into the hilts, then you can use the external switches. But one thing I like to do is add these tactile switches here. That way you can kind of cycle through some of the features on the chassis or on the saber without needing the chassis in the hilts. So it's just a little extra that I added. It just duplicates the functionality of these 2 switches. To remove the battery, I like to dig my fingernail onto the positive end and just kind of like pry it out like that. You'll notice that the chassis, the battery holder, is marked positive there for the positive end of the battery, the button top, and the negative is marked over there for the flatter negative side of the battery. So when inserting the battery, I like to do negative side first because my chassis has this kind of lip there. It serves to hold the battery in a little bit tighter. So once you have the battery seated, just flip the kill switch on. So if you flip it down, it's off. If you flip it up, it's on. Over there it says on in Orbesh, which also kind of looks like English. So once the kill switch is flipped on, you want to hold the top button. So this is wired to the main switch, and this is wired to the auxiliary. So just hold that to turn the saber on. And then once that's done, you can insert the chassis back into the hilt. So you want to insert it with the connector facing up. It doesn't matter which orientation it is in because it's kind of a radial chassis connector. So just insert that in. Make sure to slide it all the way in. And then once you have it slid all the way in, you'll kind of feel the chassis making contact with something. So there's actually pogo pins in there that makes contact with this radial chassis connector. So slide that in. And then to lock the chassis in place, just screw the pommel all the way in. So we have our main switch over here, auxiliary switch over here. Be careful not to stare into the LED because these are higher power LEDs. So let's put a blade in here. The neat thing about this hilt is that it does take a thumb screw for the blade retention, so you don't need any extra tools to carry around with you. Loosen that up, slide the blade in. So slide that all the way in until it's bottomed out, and then just tighten the retention screw.
Power on.
So turning that back on. So we got a flash on clash there. In the app itself, you can actually tweak or tune the sensitivity of the clash. So right now, the clash sensitivity is probably pretty high. You got some gesture controls as well. So there's twist on, twist off. Hold the main button to turn it off. And then
apprentice magenta.
When the blade is off, you can tap the auxiliary switch to kind of cycle through the 34 fonts on the saber. It's kind of a Mace Windu.
The princess. The butcher. Truly lost. Wraith. The Senate. Redeemed. Bounty.
So there you have it. There's trigger the twist on there. So there you go. There's your Saberbay Imp Sword installed with a Xeno 3 and RGB setup with a removable chassis. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And as always, thank you so much for letting me work on this, and may the Force be with you.